So questions do that very well. They can
Yeah.
direct your focus because you're in control of your thought patterns. You don't realize it, but by asking questions, you take control of the steering wheel and you can say where you want to go. And then you just need to make it a habit, right? Take one step, then the next step, and then it keeps going and going. And then before you know it, the autopilot is you asking better questions. That's really what the goal should be.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Forward Think Tank podcast, a place for sharing stories of hope, inspiration, and wisdom on all things holistic health. I'm your host, Jamie Mazza, a holistic health coach and lifelong dancer. After being diagnosed with a rare thymic tumor and autoimmune disease, I am on a mission to fully, radically heal. Tune in as I share stories from my personal healing journey, interviews with forward thinkers and healers in the wellness industry, and stories from incredible humans who have gone through their own health challenges and continue to move forward in hope. Thanks for tuning in. So grateful you're here. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Forward Think Tank. I'm your host, Jamie Mazza, and I am reunited with my very special guest, my husband, Nick. Nick, your episode so far was one of the most viewed and listened to, so I think you're a fan favorite.
Awesome. Happy to be back.
Thank you for doing this with me. You know how much it means to me. I really do think, based on the conversation we were having this morning, which kind of propelled me to ask you to have this conversation with me, I think you have a lot of wisdom to impart because you just continue to work on developing yourself, as do I. And I think it's a really great thing when you can share that with people outside of me. You know, I know it's something you've really emphasized to me over the years when I've struggled with my mental health and been in some places where I felt like I was having a hard time figuring out the path to move forward. I actually want to start this episode by reading a quote from Brianna Weiss. If you follow her on Instagram, I believe she's an author, very spiritual in everything that she shares. I'm just always very drawn to her words. And I read this to you this morning. And so this is kind of what sparked the conversation. If you would like to change your life, you must first change the way you think about your life. Thoughts are not just thoughts. They are bridges and doors and entryways and foundations. They magnetize and repel. They can build a house and tear it down. They can energize momentum or keep you idling with your own little world forever. Thoughts are investments and they are decisions. The mind will generate an endless series of options, some inspiring and others terrifying. And so you must choose. You must choose what you will return to, what you will believe in, what you will place weight on, because thoughts create feeling, and feeling creates desire, and desire creates action, and action creates reward, and reward creates more desire. And before you know it, a thought became the torch that led you down the path that is your life. If you would like to change your life, you must first change the way you think about your life. There was never another way. And that really hit me because of a lot of what you have told me over the years, which is what you focus on, what you pay attention to is what becomes your reality. So I would love for you to take that quote that I just read and tell you what it means to you.
Well, I mean, first off, a quote is great and it's so true. Our thoughts create our reality and the stories that we tell ourselves create our reality as well, even if they aren't real, if that makes sense, right? You can be telling yourself a story. There's people who are telling themselves a shitty story all day long, right? They're always focused on the shit in life and they're getting that result because of how they're thinking. Because the mind is such a powerful thing. Like your mind will believe whatever you tell it to believe, even if it's not true, right? It's so powerful. And, if you're making up a story in your head that is shit, then you're gonna experience a shit life. If you take the opposite and you focus on something that is empowering, even if it's not true, you're gonna experience that, right? You could have a shitty life, but if you tell yourself the opposite, and you do that enough, you're going to experience life in a much better way.
I think something that you got in a good habit of, and what you always tell me, is ask yourself a better question. I know I had a hard time when you were telling me to do that because I was running a similar scenario on autopilot that was just filling me with fear and doubt and keeping me frozen in time and like idling, as she said in that quote. So that really resonated with me. I remember early on in our relationship, before we lived together, you would call me every morning on your way to work. We would talk, and you were driving in the car going into the suburbs, and I was having a complete opposite environment around me. As I was commuting to work, I was taking the subway into the city, and I was walking through traffic and cars honking and people yelling and all sorts of chaos. So you'd call me and I'm like bumping elbows with people, like running across town, and you're like, good morning, like, how are you? Like, what's going on? What's good? And I was just like, God, like, how is this man positive all the time? So I think there's a reason why you were feeling that way. So tell me a little bit more.
I mean, it really comes down to state management. And, no one's going to feel great at all times. That would be weird if you were positive 24/7, right? But if a majority of the time you are thinking positive, then you just have a better experience of life. And that took me a while to learn that. I used to not live in that space. And then someone introduced me to self-development stuff. And I jumped into that, really dove into that, and learned some really amazing things. And then once that all started to really click for me, then it was a matter of making it a habitual behavior of my daily life to think in a certain way. And there's so much, I can't really dive into it all in an episode like this, but one of the biggest things is your focus and what you think about. Because what you're focused on, and there's a good example, it's like focus equals feelings, right? Whatever you're focused on is how you're going to feel, right? Maybe we try an exercise, entertain me. And if anyone's listening to this and you're driving, pull over or do it later. So what I want you to do is I'm going to give you a couple seconds. I'm going to give you time to look around the room you're in and find everything in the room that is brown. So look around the room, look for everything, try to make note of it, keep looking, right? A couple more seconds, keep looking. Something behind you, maybe, something below you. Okay, now stop. Close your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I want you to tell me everything that you saw that was green.
What?
Right? It's like, wait a minute. Now open your eyes. Now look around. Do you see more green than when I just asked you?
Definitely.
Definitely.
I was not paying attention to anything that was green before.
Right. You were hyper-focused on what was brown. And it's a perfect analogy because so many people hyper-focus on the brown, on the shit of life, that they miss out entirely on the green, on the things that are growing. That's a perfect example because when you're hyper-focused, that's all you're going to experience in life.
Yeah.
And we do this habitually, but if we find ourselves in a state that isn't serving us and that we don't want to be feeling that way, it's because we're habitually focused in a certain way. We're on autopilot. We're constantly looking for the brown. And it's when you can kind of interrupt that, and that's why it took you a while and same with me. You were on this kind of autopilot.
Pattern.
Yeah, it's a pattern.
Yeah.
And once you interrupt that, then you can start to make shifts in your lives and you can start to be a little more positive. You can start to see the good in different situations. And the way that I direct my focus is through questions.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason it's through questions is because you're asking yourself questions all day long. You're not conscious of it. It's all subconscious. When you can ask yourself different questions is where you can get different results. What questions do is they interrupt your pattern.
Sure.
And then they direct you in a path that you want to go. So another example, have you ever been in a situation where you're in a deep conversation with someone? You're just talking and someone comes out of nowhere and asks you a question like, hey, where's the bathroom? You stop and you direct them and then you go back to the conversation you were just having. You're like, oh, where were we?
Right.
You're kind of not confused, but you're kind of it takes you a second to get back into it. The reason because it diverted your attention. So if you're on this constant focus of looking at things the wrong way, you can change that by interrupting that with a question.
Yeah. As you're saying this, I'm picturing either driving on cruise control, or so many of us obviously now use Google Maps or Waze to get us around. So we think we're going one way, following this very specific set of directions, and all of a sudden, oh, there's a new route to take that's going to shave like 15 minutes off your time. It comes up and you're just like, okay, yeah, I'm going to follow that instead. So it reroutes you.
Right. Yeah.
Totally interrupting your path forward.
Yeah, you're interrupting it, definitely. And you're interrupting it, and then you're directing it which way you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we kind of talked about this on the other podcast, but like I was saying that there's good in everything, and there may not be good in everything, right? But if you ask yourself, what's good about this?
Or what can I learn from this?
What can I learn from this?
Yeah.
How can I change how I feel right now? Or how can I look at things better? I'm always asking myself, I used to do this more than in the past. I need to do it more, but I would always wake up and say, what's great about my life? What better way to start the day out?
Yeah, it's a very empowering question.
And if you have to do it with expecting an answer. You don't just go, what's great about my life? And then you go and say, well, nothing. I have to go to work today. You actually stop and you say, like, what is great about my life? Holy shit, I opened my eyes today.
Or even if
I rolled out of bed.
Like, I have a job.
I have a job, right.
If you don't know where to start, you start small and you start with the obvious things. I think when you were telling me this, it was a time where I feel like I was in such a bad headspace that I was only focused on the brown, and I was only focused on like what was going wrong or what wasn't working yet or what I wasn't achieving yet or I lacked, that it was hard for me to be like, oh God, okay, what's great about my life? I mean, granted, now I see things totally different, and there's so many things I could have said that great in my life. I had I had a great relationship, I had loving family, I had a job, I was making money, I had every opportunity at my fingertips living in New York. There's so many different ways you could frame it, but I think I'm speaking to those people who maybe are in a bit of a funk or feeling a little depressed or feeling a little hopeless right now and, not really sure how to take a step forward. It can feel really hard to reach for like a really great thought. Like that might feel really out of reach. And I know the person that introduced you to this way of thinking really introduced you to Tony Robbins. So if people are not familiar with Tony Robbins, I mean, he is one of the greatest thought leaders. I mean, I don't even know how he defines himself. He's a public speaker. He's an author. He's a very successful man in the world of self-development, and he speaks to large audiences. He's worked with all sorts of celebrities, but also very ordinary people as well, and he helps make profound change in people's life. I saw that change in you early on in our relationship. So for me, I think it was hard to feel like I could reach for that great thought. What resonated with me was a little bit different. I more gravitated towards like the female self-developers. And Gabby Bernstein was one of them. And what she used to say is just reach for the next best thought. So maybe it's not this ultimate, my life is like rainbows and butterflies, because you're not just going to automatically feel that way, right? It takes practice. I feel like this is something you did every day for years. But for me, when I heard her say that, it's like, oh, I can do that. That feels a little more attainable. I could reach for the next best thought. Maybe it's not my life is awesome or my day has been so amazing or, all these wonderful things have happened, but like, what's the next best thought? Instead of focusing on, I feel so depressed, it's like, well, I'm so grateful for my best friend who sent me that funny meme and made me laugh today. Reaching for the next best thought, for me, hearing that really resonated. I was in a place where I felt like I couldn't constantly ask myself all these like empowering questions all the time. It felt very unrealistic, I think, for me at the time.
No, I mean, I think that makes sense, right? But that is starting one small step, whereas what you were describing seemed like such a leap. And I love that. Once you take one step, then you're at least starting. You're getting the momentum going. Then it just snowballs and grows. But you need to put in the time and the work and the effort in order to make it grow. Some people will take the one step and then they'll just stand there. They won't take the next step.
Well, what were some questions you would ask yourself when you were in a really good habit of doing this? In addition to what's great about my life?
How can I change this? How can I have more fun in this situation?
That's a great one.
Yeah. I mean, gratitude was such a large part of my questions.
Yeah.
You know, asking what, you know, really, what am I grateful for is huge, because then you start to put your life into perspective. I think all of us, we're trying to better ourselves constantly, right? That we forget about like the stuff that's all around us at all times. And like we take so much for granted. So when you're actually able to kind of put yourself in a gratitude mindset, it like changes everything, because it makes something that seems so small and insignificant could totally change your day, could change your life if you actually give enough thought to it.
Yeah. I mean, I think I agree. You were talking in the beginning of this about state, and I think gratitude totally changes your state. It changes your focus. It changes the emotions that are coming up, and really just gives you a completely different feeling and spin on things. So I think gratitude is really important because it centers you and brings you back to where you're at. And I remember my dad suggesting that when I had recently graduated college and I didn't know what I wanted to do. He's like, why don't you just start with, keeping a journal of things that you're grateful for? Write down 3 things every day. And it could be something really simple, but I want you to write down different things every day. So, I started, it was like the middle of summer. I had recently graduated. I was like, okay, I'm grateful for the sun today, how that feels on my face. And then I think it's also important to elaborate a little bit more and say why you're grateful for it. Not just like throw it out like, okay, I'm grateful for my bed and I'm grateful for my breakfast. Like,
Absolutely.
why are you grateful for it? Give it a little bit more of a story.
Totally.
So that creates a deeper meaning, maybe a bigger focus on like the big picture.
And we used to do that. We'd say, what are you grateful for? Okay, why are you grateful for it? And then how does that make you feel? Right? So then it kind of causes you to go down and kind of really dig into it, instead of, to your point, just saying it and just being like, okay, I'm grateful that the sun's out today.
That's taking the easy way out, right, instead of deepening that like connection and what it actually means to you.
So questions do that very well. They can direct your focus, and then you're in control of your thought patterns. You don't realize it, but by asking questions, you take control of the steering wheel and you can say where you want to go. And then you just need to make it a habit, right? Take one step, then the next step, and then it keeps going and going. And then before you know it, the autopilot is you asking better questions. And that's really what the goal should be.
Yeah. I mean, I also remember Dr. Amen. So he's a doctor who studies the brain, and he talks a lot about ants, automatic negative thoughts. That really resonated with me too, because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just continuously running this pattern of constantly thinking about negative things, and it's building like a snowball and it's making me feel worse and worse. But I had such a hard time catching and interrupting those thoughts because they were so subconscious that I almost felt like I couldn't control them. And I remember so many people that I followed in the wellness industry at the time when I was going through IIN and studying to become a health coach. It's like, no, you have the power to choose your thoughts. And I'm like, yeah. I would say that to people, but like I didn't actually embody it. And I don't feel like it was until I started a meditation practice and really slowed down all of my thoughts that I then started to pay attention to what would come up. And then I was like, okay, I think I can interrupt this and choose to think about something else. So meditation for me allowed me to not have all of this running in the background and really get clear on what was coming to the surface and what thoughts I was choosing that I wasn't even aware of.
And you're also, by doing that, and repetition starts to develop a belief. I think anything repeated over and over, whether you're hearing something over and over, whether you're doing something over and over, whether you're seeing something over and over, whether you're experiencing it, forms a belief about what is possible, right? Anything you believe, I think it's just like a repetition of that. So you doing what you just said multiple times, and you start to believe that you're able to do that, or you believe life is good, or you believe you're in control of your thoughts, and once you have the belief, then it's like game over.
Yeah. There's so many things that are coming to my mind because I know of everything we've talked about over the years with you learning from Tony Robbins. Something that I remember you showing me that really stood out for me was motion creating emotion. And I think as a dancer, like that really stuck with me. I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. So do you mind just quickly explaining that
Well,
concept? Because
we were talking about like your emotions and your state, right? And there's multiple things that go into that. One is your focus. We're just talking about questions and your thoughts that will control your state. Another part of that is your physiology, right? And that's the quickest way for you to change your state is through physiology. Just moving your body, you will get a different reaction. Your parents would say when you're a kid, if they were just all like mopey, they'd say, get up and go outside. They did that because they knew it would change how you were
yeah,
experiencing life.
play.
You're out playing,
Yeah.
you're moving. For you love dance, right? This happens to you all the time when you're in a shitty like spot. You just get up and you start dancing. And you're a totally different person after the fact. And there's a lot that goes into that. All the chemical reactions in your body. Like a perfect example of this is like we've done this exercise before. When you think of someone who's depressed, picture someone in your mind who's depressed.
Mm-hmm.
How are they standing? Their shoulders down? Is their head down? Is their eyes glazed down, right? Are they, doing shallow breathing? You do that, you're not gonna feel great at all. But
Mm-hmm.
someone with their shoulders back, head up, just taking like good deep breaths and speaking, like it changes how you feel.
Yeah, it's like that power pose. I've been in multiple classes before where they're like, hit your power pose. What makes you feel most confident? And I think when you're confident, you're going to stand and move much differently to your point. Like you're going to have your head up, you're going to have shoulders back, you're going to be standing tall and proud, and then you can breathe easier. You might be smiling more. It creates a total ripple effect from a cellular
Right.
level.
Well, it's a message to your brain, right? Your brain knows when you're in that, like how you're supposed to feel. I think there was a study, we were just talking about smiling. There was a study on people who were depressed, like manic depressive. And all they had them do for like, I don't know how long, but they made them do it for a while, is just smile. It's like, even if you're feeling depressed, just smile. They made them smile for like, I don't know, an hour or whatever it was. Like, and actually like really smile. And it just was then it sent a totally different message to their brains to be like, well, this isn't linking up because when I'm smiling, I'm feeling good. So when you get up, you start to move, you're sending a totally different message to your brain. And that's the fastest way to change your state is through physiology.
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right, especially over the last, month, you've seen me in a completely different physiological state where I've been having to rest a lot more, laying down a lot more, taking more naps. And I'm finally at the point where I'm feeling so much better, where I am able to do these things now. But like even like going out for a short walk was really hard for me. So instead of focusing on like, oh my God, like this feels so terrible. And don't get me wrong, I totally had those thoughts multiple times a day. And I chose to redirect them because it was making me feel even crappier. And certain things were just completely out of my control. So I said, okay, well, what can I do? And I know I've talked about this across a couple of episodes, but listening to those healing frequencies, playing that healing house playlist, playing music that I know is going to make me want to get up and move. And I'd get up and move my body for 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes. I would make you dance around with me at the end of the night or, the beginning of the day, or even just something like hugging. There's scientific research to hugging. If you hug someone for 11 seconds, it stimulates oxytocin, which is that feel-good connecting hormone, which can also just, lower your stress levels, create a sense of bonding and intimacy. And, it truly creates a ripple effect in your body. But when I couldn't do the full extent of the exercise and movement that I wanted to, I did something. Mm-hmm. And even if it was just for a brief moment in time, I felt that connection to myself again. I knew that I had to do that to start feeling a little bit better.
Awesome.
And another good question you can ask, I love when you said, how can I make this more fun? This is something I got from Marie Forleo that forever stuck with me. I love her. She's another one that I just really gravitated towards. She would always say, how can I make this more fun? Or how can I bring more joy to this? joy is such a beautiful emotion. Or, how can I make this more playful? These are the types of questions that once I finally got it and it finally clicked with what you were saying, like ask yourself better questions. Those were the ones that really stuck with me and made me see things differently. So I know, like, when we were at the Storm King Art Center this weekend, I was like, okay, like, we're walking around, we're seeing art, this is cool. But then I started setting up my camera and like put the timer on, and we were taking some quirky little art pictures and, posing, and it just made us laugh. It felt more playful. I felt more like a kid. And I think that for me also really helps it sit in my memory bank as being more memorable, because it created more of that good emotion.
Yeah, I love that. And what a great question too. How can I bring joy? Not only are you focused on the joy part, but you're focused on bringing it. So you're actually contributing, right? You are making the experience better, not just for yourself, but for others around you. So I love that.
Yeah. I think something else too, and I know you're good about this. I see it in like your day to day and so many things that you've done for others over the years. Another quote that's coming to my mind is, if you feel helpless, help someone else, or do something for someone else, or, make someone's day. Could be something as simple as saying good morning to somebody, or holding the door, or bring your coworker their favorite coffee drink, or something really little. Give a stranger a compliment. I love complimenting people, and that I don't like ever give compliments unless I really mean them. But that has the opportunity to change the trajectory of someone else's day. And then that can feel really good for you too. So I don't know if you want to speak to that, but I think you can be really good at thinking about others.
I mean, I think that's just kind of how I operate. I think everyone operates off of different hierarchies. Remember, we spoke about that, right?
Yep.
So there's these 6 human needs, right? Everyone fulfills at least 4 of them. And then the other 2 are like, not everyone does, but those are like where all the magic happens. So, and once you realize what's your driving, and none of these are like right or wrong. It's just how you kind of like prioritize these different things. But the first one is certainty, uncertainty, or variety. Then there's connection and love. And then there's, geez, I'm forgetting the 4th.
Contribution, I think, is one.
Well, no, the 5 is contribution, 6 is growth.
Okay.
And those contribution growth, not everyone makes happen, but the top 4, everyone does. So once you kind of realize which one you are, you kind of realize what is kind of controlling. Like for me, I'm someone who likes certainty a lot. And like when I feel uncertain, I notice myself really getting worked up. Where someone else, uncertainty is really what drives them, right? Someone who's like, I need to switch it up. Like you're kind of that way. You're like, I can't do the same thing every day. We need to do, like, I mean, everyone has these, and I feel that way too. But there's some people, like, you think about someone who's like totally on the variety or the uncertainty like spectrum, is like, let's go jump out of planes today, or let's go like do X, Y, and Z, right? There's a whole range of all of that. But the last 2, it was contribution and growth. And growth is a big one for me. Like I am always like, oh, how can I better myself? What can I do to get to the next spot? But some people are contribution. That is really what drives them. And that's where you get all the magic, when you start helping other people.
Maybe that's me putting this podcast out there, wanting to help others.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I think connection is big for me too, which is why it can drive me crazy when we're sitting on the couch, but we're both on our phones. Okay, so I think we can wrap this up. I think this was a lot of good conversations. And I think to your point about contribution, I pick on you to get on this podcast and talk to me, because I think that there's so many good nuggets of wisdom that you've learned over the years, that you've shared with me over the years, that encourage me to do. And I know that not everybody listening, or, people out there who may not even know this podcast exists, or people who may not know about Tony Robbins or Gabby Bernstein or Marie Forleo, who are searching for something better and wanting something bigger or wanting change, but not really sure how to go about it, I would love to have this podcast be a resource for that. So I appreciate you coming on here with me and talking about this. I hope it will help a lot of people who may need a little uplift.
I mean, we've just scratched the surface of really the depth of, because there's so much that goes into it. But it starts by taking a small step, and this is a small step that a lot of people can put into play now and get like immediate results. So, and we're no professionals, but I mean, I'm not. I think this is kind of like, it's a second nature to me at this point. But yeah, I mean, definitely just take the first step, get the ball rolling, and then before you know it, like, how you're experiencing life is going to be so different. And that's been a huge help on this whole journey of, what we're going through right now.
For sure.
And I think it's kind of the saving grace. So everyone has their own challenges in life. So if this could be a help to anybody, hopefully it is.
Yeah. So to sum this episode up, if you want to make changes in your life, start by asking yourself better questions or examining what it is that you're telling yourself on a daily basis. Some time alone, silencing those thoughts and meditating. Think about what you're grateful for. Ask yourself how you can make things more fun or more interesting or more playful. Also pay attention. I think I love what you said about state and moving your body. Physically pay attention to how you're carrying yourself. And start small. It doesn't have to be this huge, giant leap, which may feel really unattainable, but start small and maybe reach for that next best thought.
And sometimes not even taking the action, but noticing, because now you're noticing, wait a minute, I need to change something here. Mm-hmm. And then you'll start asking questions and do whatever. But yeah, sometimes even something that minimal can be the starting point to shift your entire life.
For sure. Awesome. Well, thank you again for doing this.
Hopefully people got something out of it.
I think so. Hey, listen, if you enjoyed this episode, which I hope you do, I know that people tend to love my husband, so show him some love. Download this episode, save it, rate it, give us a comment. We'd love to hear what you think about this. Share this episode with somebody. That is the best thing you can do to support both of us, but mostly, to support me and my vision for this podcast. Please share it. We appreciate you listening, and we thank you for being here, and see you again soon. Hey friend, if you love to cook in the kitchen and you're super mindful of ingredients in your condiments, I need you to try the Primal Kitchen brand. I am so obsessed with it. I have been a huge fan of their products for years because they are made with avocado oil and pure, simple ingredients. They really get back to basics when it comes to quality, and it's one of the few brands that I trust when I'm buying prepackaged foods. I'm obsessed with their buffalo wing sauce. I use it for wings. I use it for chicken marinade. I use it for salad dressings, for dips, for sandwiches, you name it. But I'm also just so in love with the variety that they have in their dressings, their marinades, their mayos, and now they have these dipping sauces that are like out of this world. So if you are mindful of the ingredients in your kitchen, I highly encourage you to check them out. Like I said, they're made with avocado oil, which is so important. And when you're doing a keto diet like me, it's really optimal that you have high quality fats. So check out their brand. If you are new to the brand, you can get 10% off your first order using code JamieFWD at checkout. That's JAMIEFWD for 10% off your first order at checkout. I hope you enjoy. Let me know how you like it. I know you're going to love it.